I would like to call the May 23rd, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Okay. Commissioner Brewer, would you read the statement of purpose?
May our decisions today be made with wisdom, careful deliberation, and in the best interest of the city of Diamond Head. May we display patience and kindness in our dealings with each other and all who are in attendance, and may any decisions made today promote the health, safety, welfare of the citizens of Diamond Head and the enhancement of the city as a whole.
Commissioner Nico, would you lead us in the pledge, if everyone will stand?
Commissioner DeBrow. Commissioner Hallwood. Present. Commissioner Nico. Present. Commissioner Bennett. Commissioner Lael. Present. Commissioner Brewer.
Present.
And Chairman Flowers.
Present. The next order of business is to confirm or make adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments that we need to make?
Not
Could
from
we-
staff.
Okay. Do we have a motion do we need a motion for that?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, can we have a motion with a second to confirm the meeting agenda?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Okay, moving on to the approval of approval of the minutes from the February 28th, 2023 meeting. Are there any adjustments, or can we have a motion with a second to approve them? Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Moving on to new business. First item of new business, Phil Latapy is appealing the building official's decision of a violation of the zoning ordinance Article 14. Land alterations and disturbances at property located on 98190 Golf Club Drive, owned by Mr. Latapy. The parcel number is 067G, check 2, check 25, check 024, period 000. Do we have a staff report for this?
Yes, we do, but I do not see Mr. Latapy in attendance here. So, Madam Chairman, I request that you call his name 3 times, and on the 3rd time, call it the 3rd final time, and then we can vote to dismiss this. Is that, or then we can vote on it? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Yes.
Okay. Is Mr. Latapy present? Is Mr. Latapy in the audience?
3rd and final.
Is Mr. Latapy present for this meeting? Okay. Please let the record note that Mr. Latapy is not present for the meeting.
Then the staff would recommend that you deny his appeal of the building official's decision.
Okay. Can we have a recommendation to deny his appeal of the building official's decision?
Yeah, that would be in the form of a motion to deny.
Okay.
I will provide a motion to deny new business item number 3.
Okay. Can we have a second? Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
And just real quickly, by way of background, so you all know, he was appealing the decision of Ronald Jones that he needed a permit to put fill on his property. And that was the decision that he's appealing. So,
Okay. Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye. And those opposed say nay. Okay. Motion passes to recommend to the city council the denial of his appeal for the building official's decision. Did I get that? Okay,
It's not a recommendation, it is a
it is a denial.
denial.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
This goes no further than this body.
thank you. Okay.
Unless he appeals.
Right. Okay. So, item number 4 under new business, this is a public hearing concerning the revision of Article 11, tree ordinance.
Let me explain how we got here.
Okay.
The city council asked us to hold a public hearing so we can get input from our residents and also study what other municipalities are doing in regard to their tree ordinances and how to better protect the tree canopy here in the city of Diamond Head. So we are now going forward with that, and tonight's version of it is to have public input for, so that we can gather as far as getting these recommendations before you for the next meeting in the form of a actionable adjustment or revision to the tree ordinance.
All right. So, do we have anyone that has signed up to speak in regards to the tree ordinance?
Well, I'm sure we do have people that would love to.
Okay.
Am I correct? And Penny, you want to lead the parade?
Sure.
I'll write your name down.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Penny Crawford, 7922 Apaki Place here in Diamond Head. I don't know what the proposed revisions are that y'all have been evaluating. I did read the ordinance itself, and it does cover a lot of things. And what I see here in Diamond Head are things like what I see on Diamond Head Drive East, where I live and where I drive every day. Multiple lots that are just clear cut and then left standing. And Mr. Jones and his staff have to go out and put a cease and desist order on the lot, but those trees will never grow back. They'll never come back. They'll never be big. We'll never have that canopy again. All we have is red fill dirt and no trees. And, you know, the promise that someone will come in and I'll plant a couple of crepe myrtles, will that work? Doesn't work for me. You know, I've been a tree hugger, I guess, all of my life. And so I don't understand what else we have to do to push the community, the developers, to understand the value we have here in trees, that it provides, you know, every resource we need from oxygen on. And so we need to do whatever you can do, whatever you can find in your power to do to fix this, to make this work for all of us, not just a developer who comes in here with a bulldozer and thinks it's perfectly fine to clear cut everything, or he decides that in a piece of land that is supposed to be a drainage area for our community and supposed to slow the water down and absorb the water, it's perfectly fine to dump a load of red dirt. And the gentleman who's not here tonight, his is a prime example of that. He came in there and it was a beautiful piece of property, and it's basically a swale for the property there for the drainage going downhill, and so he fills it up. And then he wants to put some more dirt on top of that. You know, why are we allowing that? And fortunately tonight we're not. And so now I guess he'll have to dig it up, but we have to go through a very prolonged system to resolve these issues, and I don't know what you can do as a group to change that. To the double lot that's over on Diamond Head Drive East that has red dirt on it, cease and desist, has been like that for 2 years at least, with red fill dirt, and it's a stop order on it. Nothing. Nobody's putting the trees back, nobody's smoothing the dirt out, nobody's building a house, nobody's doing anything. And pieces of property like one on the end of a little cul-de-sac on a drainage ditch where local people who must have bought that piece of property cheap, or a couple of pieces, and they just went and bulldozed the whole thing. Now, it's got a 45-degree angle, going to be a little hard to build a house on it, but they bulldozed it, I guess figuring they could just dump some red dirt in there. So much for the drainage ditch and the other thing, so much for the trees that we used to have there. They'll never come back, and not in my lifetime they won't. But we need to do something, and you need to step up and really work hard at figuring out how to do something to stop what's going on. If it takes a building or a moratorium, well, I could go for that. But you know, I don't think that works too well for a lot of property owners who want to make the money off of their property. I know, I gotta go. Okay, but thank you very much for working on this and for giving it some priority and trying to help all the rest of us that live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
I got it.
Hey, Pat,
You all are
Can you
well
watch the
known to the
time for
city,
me?
so we
Oh, dear. Well, I
Ma-
want to thank y'all for everything
oh
that
wait, can you
do.
state your name and address
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry.
record?
Pidgey White, 6522 Mauna Loa Drive, Diamond Head. And I guess my main concern is we have ordinances that were published in 2019, and they're really well done. And I know that other people would like to add to it, but my big concern is why haven't they been enforced? We have these builders that come in and just massacre just acres, and we're worried about our flooding problems. And if that continues to be allowed, it's just going to get worse. And I worry also about how many vacant lots are there and who's going to buy them and for what purpose. And if we could somehow maintain those vacant lots to prevent further flood damage, because that's kind of like a simple solution. But I don't know why it hasn't been enforced, because those 11.1 and tree ordinance, Diamond Head, Mississippi, they're about 3 pages worth. All you have to read are the first 3 paragraphs. And it outlines, it doesn't matter whether it's corporations, it doesn't matter whether it's individuals, but it addresses the fact that they have to be protected. And now we know, not just for the beauty, and of course that's what we all want, but flood. It's happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Pidgey.
Anyone else?
Vaughn?
Okay. Hi.
My name is Vaughn Biggs at 63720 Diamond Head Drive North. I just wrote a letter today to some people here. No one here, I don't think. Did you get that?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, good. But you know what? I failed to attach the PDF that I wanted to, so I have it, and I'm just going to attach
very good.
briefly what it talks about. And our requirements just aren't strict enough. Even Gulfport's aren't strict enough. I pulled up Seattle's, where they're very serious about saving their trees. They look at tree canopy. Even a residential has to leave 33% of their canopy. They have replacement trees, which the species that's taken out has to be replaced by the same species, and whoever takes it out has to manage it until it's grown to a particular height. I can't remember. And this is the real killer. I love this, but I know it's not possible. The penalty for removing a tree without a permit, $45,000. They are very serious about that. Of course, they can get permits to remove trees. I'm just saying that's proof of their seriousness, and they have been protecting their environment while they're growing. I think we can do that as well. And I also put in this letter that my personal hope would be for Diamond Head to use this window of opportunity to become a recognized eco-destination. That would mandate wildlife corridor planning and and personal investment by the city and the citizens. We need more shrubbery to be saved for that. And I love an idea that Pidgey has for a land legacy, which I don't know if you're ready to share. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vaughn. Yes. We appreciate you. Because I didn't get this one.
Is that all right with you, Pat?
What?
If I tell them about my idea?
Yes, go right ahead. Yes. Excuse me, Madam Chairman. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Pat's just taking over here.
I would,
It's
I would,
okay.
I would recommend not being so strict on the time limits, since we don't have so many people here.
That's right.
That we could listen to
can
all
manage
their
it.
ideas.
We can manage it.
Well, it's
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. It's just one basic idea. I was
Step up to
thinking-
the microphone,
Oh.
Pidgey.
I was thinking, instead of, complaining all the time and wah, 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 what possibly could be done at this point? And I thought, well, maybe there could be something called the Living Tree Legacy. And individuals, like I wanted to buy a lot, and I found out I could buy a lot from the POA very reasonably. And I could buy that lot, purchase it, donate it to the city, and then, the city wouldn't pay taxes or POA fees. But it would be a designated wooded lot that could never be built upon and nothing could be torn down. And if there were any natural disasters, the city would be responsible for the debris or whatever. But there would be a plaque, and it would be standardized like the 1880 trees. And it would just say, the Living Tree Legacy in memorial of a family member or something, if somebody wanted to do that. But the problem is, we gotta hurry up and buy those lots before builders do. I'm sorry.
No.
No.
That's,
No, but
that's,
that's-
and in many instances, we've done that. The previous city manager, along with this city manager, and we were successful in getting a lot of lots donated to the city for that express purpose. And there is a deed restriction on them that says the city can't sell them. We've got to keep them for drainage, wildlife preservation. And so we've been doing some of that.
Y'all were way ahead of the game.
We're trying. I think that's a great idea.
And then family members can have their own thing, and they can bring, all of their family there and look at their plaque. Thank you.
Wait, a minute, I think we have a question from the commission.
Well, actually, my question was for Derek.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Do we know how many of those, that situation, obviously you're calling it a legacy tree or living tree legacy. Do we know how many of those lots that are in that state?
There were a bunch, and there's some, that the city identified, and we went with our engineers and identified them as what we really referred to as drainage lots. Really lots that we looked at where just the use of the lot is best to keep it as drainage. Now, there are some lots that people assume may be best used for drainage, and if they're owned by private individuals, they may or may not want to turn them over to the city. There are some that we could offer to purchase. But we were successful. I'd say there's about a dozen lots over the last 3 or 4 years that were donated to the city, spread throughout the city. Obviously, there's others. People's Bank, we were able to purchase a bunch of lots from People's Bank that they decided were just not developable, and really it was in the best interest of the city. We've got to balance taking some of these properties off of the tax rolls, taking them off of the POA rolls. It's it's a balance, but where we see them and where we identify them, we've been successful in doing that. So,
And I know on Facebook there was a real good suggestion about maybe letting more people know how serious the situation is about the flooding so that they could buy the lot next to them if it was vacant. That just making them more aware, and so that they would go ahead and
yeah, and a lot of folks individually are not in a position to buy lots, but if you are in a position and you want it preserved, that's the best way to make sure. If you want, a house that I previously lived in, I loved my vacant lot next to me, and I always thought, man, I hope nobody buys that before I have the money to buy it. And unfortunately, somebody bought it and built a house right on top of mine. But that's kind of so you've got the city looking at those. Obviously, residents can look at those and say, hey, I'm going to take the bull by the horns. I'm going to buy it. I'll combine it with my lot, or I'll preserve it, or I'll donate it. And look, if you own it, that's the best way to guarantee that a tree doesn't come down. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
you.
No, it's okay.
Pidgey has done a real great job on this. She's met with the POA and got them nodding their heads. She came and met with me, and then John McGraw, the city manager, and so this is something. I think 3 lots have been identified that because they do not meet the requirements for the minimum lot size that the POA is offering up for sale for this purposes for $600 a lot, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's 3 of them that have been identified.
So-
And that's, and of course, we can look in the future at other lots that could be used for that purposes too, those purposes too, whether you call them drainage lots or unsuitable to build lots or whatever you want to call them.
And you know, as our city grows and we're afraid that the lots are going to be taken over, you know, maybe if it works here, it could work in other cities. It could be the beginning of, you know, maybe something that we can hope for.
Yeah, similar to like a mitigation, where you,
Right, mitigation, yes.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, no, that is a good word in this case. Yes, in this case it is.
yeah.
One of those legal words.
Well,
And I
it's-
read one of the comments and it said, "Don't take advice from the attorneys." One of the residents wrote in, and I thought that was well taken. I thought that was well taken. Yeah, I was like, say that to my face and I'll agree with you.
So do we have anyone else that would like to speak about the tree ordinance? Okay. Okay, so, thank you. If not, we'll move on to new business, number 5.
Can I-
Oh.
Before we leave there, yes, I want to just kind of fill you in. We've got some recent information, okay?
Okay.
Recent suggestions from our residents, in addition to the 3 that were presented here tonight. Some other emails have come in.
Okay.
And what I did was, and it's included in your packet there, I just kind of summarized what their suggestions were.
Okay.
Margaret Dutton had sent an email, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Margaret. She sent an email and outlined several good things in there. The email is included in there. But just to summarize what the suggestions were, stated goal of preserving all healthy mature trees, expand the list of protected trees, a committee or a board with a professional staff with professional people to make recommendations in public meetings, include protecting the drip line of trees. You've identified a tree for protection, but you need to protect the root system too. Otherwise, you're gonna lose that tree if you come in and put cement around where the roots are, or the bulldozer driver kind of bounces up against it, et cetera. So, protect the drip line. Improve and expand mitigation for protected trees, replacement sizes, maintenance period of these replacements, public property, increase a canopy, and a mitigation trust fund. Moratorium for violations, what they're talking about there, if you make several violations, maybe you don't get another building permit for a year or something like that. That's an example of making it where it's painful for somebody to really, the problem we have here most of all, in my opinion, is that the developer understands what the laws are. And he sends his people out and they identify the trees that are to be protected and they're marked or et cetera. But the worker bee, the guy driving the dozer or the track hoe or whatever piece of equipment out there, doesn't get that information. Okay, this tree, I gotta knock it out of the way. That's his objective in life. Knock as many trees as I can down today. So, we think that is a problem, and how do you solve that problem? Well, if you make it painful for the developer, then the developer will have to come up with a way to communicate with the worker bee to make sure that they do their job right. And, you know, the orange netting under the drip lines, all these things will help to impact that. So, of course, let's see, moratorium, incentives for preservation. That's one thing that, you know, we talk about the stick and the carrot. Well, let's try to use a carrot in this place as well as the stick. Replace any tree that is removed. In some jurisdictions, that's what they look at. Enforce existing ordinance, we heard that again tonight. Keep non-protected trees to prevent soil erosion. think that was, okay, yeah, yes. Not just protected trees, but let's really define, go in and look at a lot and say, okay, where's your house pad gonna be? And then we keep everything else, okay? Now, the problem you run into down here, and you're gonna hear this from the insurance companies, is pine trees. And those are the worst root systems of any tree. So you're gonna encounter it. But let's not talk about obstacles, let's talk about suggestions here. And then finally, increase the penalties. And I believe we heard that again tonight. So we're hearing the same themes coming from several different sources here. Hopefully, people will view this on our YouTube channel and come in and address us with the building department with more suggestions. We'd like more input. I mean, we just got a handful of people here. And then we've got another handful that sent us emails. And then we got some that sent us emails and showed up. So, we need more people, more input, make this a community solution, not a city hall solution, not a planning commission solution. I've done some research with Mississippi State Extension Service, some things that they've talked about, and they break the state out into about 4 regions and talk about trees for that. So, and we're looking at other cities and how they've done it, not just locally here, but outside of here. So we're trying to see how things are done, trying to come up with a solution that isn't equal, but make sure that it stays equal, that one doesn't outfavor the other, and that's where you get into trouble. So hopefully we've learned from our mistakes. Yes?
Just one quick question, and I may just be not interpreting this properly. The protected trees, the live oak and the magnolia, do they count towards the tree count necessary on the residual tree density?
Correct,
They do count towards it, okay.
correct.
And we currently don't have anything on the residual trees as far as caliper size requirements, as far as the size of those trees that have to be maintained.
Correct. And that is one of the downfalls of the ordinance, is that it allows you, and I think someone else used this example, if you take down, let's just say it's not a protected tree. Let's just say you're supposed to have 12 trees on your lot, and your bulldozer driver went out there and he only left you 10 trees. So you got to add 2 more trees. Well, you can take a crepe myrtle, and that, by the way, a crepe myrtle is one of those that's recommended by the Extension Service. But you can take a crepe myrtle and plant it there, and you've met the requirement. Now, who's going to make sure that that thing is still living in 2 years? And that's the kind of thing that we have to look at. Equal or greater than what you had. Some places they say, okay, if you take out a protected tree, you got to put in 2. So these are the kind of issues that we're looking at to make this a serious ordinance.
So, Madam Chairman, can I say one more thing about that?
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Commissioner Nico has a question.
So for these major developers that are still coming in, I don't know how many more subdivisions we have that we can develop, not many, like 3 maybe.
Yeah.
So for those that are still trying to bulldoze, is there a way to have a committee set up so when it's flipped, we could send our committee liaison or that person out there when we know the bulldozers are coming to oversee this situation? I know we're short-staffed sometimes, or, like,
Well,
who's overseeing this?
We've got an arborist that we've got that's part of that we've got that when we do a tree survey or when there is a protected tree that's questionable as to whether it's healthy or not, or whether it could come down or not, or should come down or not, we do have an arborist, and that cost is assessed to whoever the applicant is. So, for example, you know, there was a tree inventory done in one of these recent subdivisions, and there were trees that were marked. But again, the message didn't get to the bulldozer driver. So on the back end, what we're doing is there will be trees that are going to be required to be put back, you know, in the subdivision. Obviously, you know, the other issue we looked at there, and Ron may, where did he go? He left us. Ron may speak to this, but I mean, there was so much dirt brought in there that it probably would have had the net result of destroying a lot of those trees anyway. But I don't know that there were, I mean, I don't know if we weren't looking at any, you know, 100-year oaks or anything like that were in there, but I mean, there were still trees that probably would have been in the protected trees that were not just in the residual tree canopy, but were actually protected trees that were taken down. And so that's something that's addressed on the back end. And again, you know, it's not ideal. You know, someone asked me at the council meeting, well, how do people do that? How do they get away with that? And it's just like with people speed, people break the law. And what we found is that the penalties on the back end are not enough to discourage folks from doing it. I mean, as Pat said, if the penalties are there, the message will get to the bulldozer driver. It'll get there. If the developer can't do, you know, Oxford's an ordinance that we looked at, and they've got this, you can't build for either a year, 2 or 3 years. If you,
Up to 3 years, depending on the
yeah,
quantity.
up to
Yep.
3. And unless you come up with a program of, I mean, so you're going above and beyond what would have normally been required, and you got to come up with that and say to the city, you know, hey, so you're paying a fine, you're coming up with a new plan to mitigate, and that's a good word in this case. I mean, we're replanting trees, we are putting trees into a tree registry, planting trees on public property, and I think that's a great idea. You know, and one last, I know I'm skipping around a little bit, but Bob Barber with Orion, who you guys are going to be hearing from all summer with our zoning rewrite, he had a great comment, and he said, as long as you allow buildings, which every city does, buildings and trees cannot exist in the same spot. So the goal is then to, what as a city do you want to see in terms of that mitigation? What do you want to see? What requirements do you want to keep that residual canopy by, again, donating cities to a registry, paying into the fund of that tree that will protect trees, putting trees on public property? We have a lot of, we've got a lot of vacant lots now. We could be we've got a lot of parks and things like that. We could be planting a lot of trees in those areas. So there's some things that we can do that it's, again, as Pat said, it's not just necessarily a stick, but it's encouraging folks that, look, we're not here to punish you guys. We know houses are going to get built. You have a right to build a house, but you're going to do it in a way that you're not detracting from the city. You're actually making the city better by contributing trees.
Christie, that was an excellent suggestion you made. I would like to take a little turn on it, though. Instead of having a committee of residents doing that, when we're doing developing a subdivision, you have the developers are required to have an engineer out there watching what they're doing and sending reports in on that on a daily basis. They're out there. Installation of the water and sewer, okay? Installation of the drainage, the lights, etc. So you have an engineer out there monitoring all of this. Why can't we have the same thing with trees? You have an arborist out there that the developer is paying for, that is out there making sure that the tree canopy that you have, the trees that you have designated that are going to be saved, that have the drip line material around it to protect the drip line, making sure that all that is taking place. And then if something doesn't happen as it should, then that engineer is responsible for it. And as an employee of the developer, I guess the developer would be, but that's what I'm thinking.
That takes it off of our.
That's correct. That's correct. And then we are checking the checker. And if the checker didn't do it right, well, it's just like if he didn't do the water or sewer right. If he didn't do the light poles right, he didn't do the drainage plan, retention ponds, blah, okay?
He doesn't get a CO.
So, it's the same type of situation, so it's just, it's another step in that enforcement, that we already got in the subdivision regulations, that we need to implement that.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Penny, I took up too
okay.
much of your time.
We'll let her, unless we have any
Saying
questions, we'll let her
exactly
be
I'm
final
nodding my
comments.
head because I'm saying the same thing through your face. I think that as a zoning board, you're the first ones before the public that gets to see the plans that these builders are coming up with. And I would love it if you would factor in the preservation of the trees as you look at their plans. And if they're saying, you know, the house is gonna be this big and they're gonna have only 5 feet on either side, we know a tree won't grow in that 5 feet. Maybe a crepe myrtle, but not a real tree will grow in that 5 feet. So we need to have bigger spaces between our houses. We need to have bigger lots in the back, bigger spaces in the back, behind the back of the house. And we need to have, when they design a subdivision, they need to design in the spaces for trees. They just have to sacrifice a little bit. You know, they have to give up that lot or two that's a drainage lot that's gonna cost them a fortune to fill, gonna have a guy have to oversee everything they do. Let's just give it back to the public. Let's just turn it over as a mitigation issue that takes care of some of their drainage issues, but also keeps a tree canopy, keeps underbrush and cover for the animals here and the birds here, and keeps everything. And y'all are the first ones that see that. I don't see that until I'm already driving around and they've already ruined it all. And so, you know, if y'all can help really keep their feet to the fire on these kind of issues, I think that would help. And we see that also in back, you know, in the backyard of somebody's property. He's gonna put a shed, he's gonna extend the canopy over his patio, he's gonna do all these kind of things. And the more he covers up the ground, the less we have to absorb water and the less place we have for a tree. He has to cut down those 3 or 4 crepe myrtles or whatever to be able to put that there. And we need to look at that too, as an overall picture of how our community is gonna look. I don't want to look like, you know, Austin, Texas or someplace. I love the way Diamond Head looked when I moved here, you know, 17, 18 years ago. So I would like to preserve that, and you're kind of our first defense here. They're our defense too, but you get to vote on some of these things too, and you get to look at them and work for us and help us with that. Thank you very much for trying to do that.
Thank you. Okay, item number 5. Okay. Motion to approve a public hearing to discuss revising Article 9, fences, to add to 9.8.c, if fences installed by the property owner in the easement must be removed by the city to service the drainage system, the cost of removal and/or replacement shall be the responsibility of the property owner.
All
Mr.
right.
Rich, you're up.
This is, that statement, that sentence in its entirety is included in the subdivision regulations. It is not included in the zoning ordinance, unfortunately. So we want to add that,
Okay.
so that everybody is well aware that if your fence is built in the drainage utility easement, it's yours, and we have to enter that to do drainage or utility work. It's the responsibility of the homeowner to take care of that.
And this is really, I mean, your easements, you know, when you buy property in Diamond Head, and there's a drainage and utility easement, you know, that water and sewer has and the city has, this is the law. I mean, you cannot restrict the city's access to that drainage. You can't block the drainage, you can't restrict the access to it. But this is another way of just, you know, because we constantly see, you know, people are shocked when the city wants to do drainage and we say, hey, your fence has to come down. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. It's just another way to remind I wish we need a plane that flies this on a banner everywhere, but everybody acts like they have no idea that this is the case. And I mean, I live in Gulfport, and when the city wants to do drainage work, I wake up on a Saturday morning and my fence in my backyard is down. They don't knock, they don't apologize, they do their job. And so, the residents here just have to, so if you are allowed, if you want a variance, or if your fence is already in the easement, we just want folks to understand that at some point, the city may have to do work. Flooding and drainage issues are huge in the city, and we're about to do a lot of work.
So there's no grandfathering existing fences. This is the ordinance, this is the zone, okay.
That is correct.
And it's grandfathered in the fact that you're allowed to have your fence there. I mean, nobody's gonna tell you you can't have your fence there, but, I mean, unless it is truly blocking the drainage. But if work has to be done in that easement, if you have an accessory structure that somehow got past the city or predates the city and it's in the drainage easement, and we can't get to it, I mean, it's,
I'm just asking. You brought up a great
Yeah.
point when you said structure.
yeah.
Should that be updated to include structures?
Well,
Would be-
the structure should not be in the drainage utility easement.
They shouldn't be.
Understood, but like utility easement.
But again, it's common, I mean, look, if you have a structure and it's in the easement and it's a dedicated easement, I mean, I don't know that we need to change the law that says, hey, by the way, I mean, it's already, so this is kind of a way of just, again, us getting the message out to folks, because again, folks are surprised by this. But if you have an easement, yeah, I mean, if we need to get through there, we have a situation right now where on GeoPortal, and it's not perfect GeoPortal, but it looks like there's a building. We're discussing with the developer this easement, and it looks like there's a house in it, and we're like, ooh. So I hope when the engineers get out there and actually survey, there's not a house in an easement, but it's possible.
Some of the houses here have been there for quite a while, 30, 40, maybe 50 years. Before there was ever a drainage problem in Diamond Head, or if there was one, it wasn't talked about a lot. So fences were allowed, no swales built. Then you have additional, and things are fine until you go and put an additional house in there, brand new construction. And then you have it goes to the swale between the houses, and it either goes to the back to where there's supposed to be another swale, or it goes to the front to where you got a ditch. And that's how the water flows. But when there's not a swale in the back, then that's where a problem is created. So your backdoor neighbor has a fence up there, and you say, well, we need to take this down so we can dig this swale here. Well, no, you can't dig that. You can't take my fence down. And I understand, but that is an easement. And anywhere, in any city you go, you have easements. And the city needs to protect and have access to those easements so we can do the kind of work, so we don't have the drainage problems, et cetera. So we're just looking to be consistent with what we have in the subdivision regulations, to apply to all easements.
All easements, perfect.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Did anyone sign up to speak on this one?
No.
Okay.
Would anyone like to speak?
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to approve a public hearing to discuss revising Article 9?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay. Thank you. So moving on to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business from previous meetings?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do we have any non-agenda items that open for public comment?
No.
Okay. Any comments from commissioners? Okay. Communication and announcements, point number 6, the next city council meeting is Tuesday, June the 6th, 2023, and the next planning commission meeting is Tuesday, June 27th, 2023.
And may I have one?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I'm sure everybody noticed, but I just want to welcome our new commissioner, Jessie Harwood. She's replacing Ms. Cook as a commissioner for, what is it, Ward 2? Two? Yes.
Ward 2.
I think that's what it is. But anyway, just want to welcome her and glad to have you aboard.
Yes, thank you for that, Pat. Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn?
I can't move, but I'd love to.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Thank y'all.
We already like Jessie, she made the motion to adjourn. I mean, come on, y'all. She's like, is this a trick? What are y'all doing?
Easy peasy, dinner time.
Jesse made the motion to adjourn.
She made the motion and, Nico seconded. Yeah, try to get it right, y'all. I mean,